matter of taxing realty transfers." Wing uttered approving grunts, and Babbitt swelled and gloated. The blind of a Pullman compartment was raised, and Babbitt looked into an unfamiliar world. The occupant of the compartment was Lucille McKelvey, the pretty wife of the millionaire contractor. Possibly, Babbitt thrilled, she was going to Europe. On the seat beside her was a bunch of orchids and violets, and a yellow paper-bound book which seemed foreign. While he stared, she picked up the book, then glanced out the window as though she was bored. She must have looked straight at him, and he had met her, but she gave no sign. She languidly pulled down the blind, and he stood still, a cold feeling of insignificance in his heart. But on the train his pride was restored by meeting delegates from Sparta, Pioneer, and other smaller cities of the state who listened respectfully when, as a magnifico from the metropolis of Zenith, he explained politics and the value of a good, sound business administration. They fell joyfully into shop talk, the purest and most rapturous form of conversation. "How'd this fellow Roundtree make out with his big apartment hotel he was going to put up? What'd he do? Get out bonds to finance it?" asked a Spartan broker. "Well, I'll tell you," said Babbitt. "Now, if I'd been handling it—" "So," Ibert Wing was droning, "I hired this shop window for a week, and put up a big sign, 'Toy Town for Tiny Tots,' and stuck in a lot of doll houses and some dinky little trees. And then down at the bottom, 'Baby likes this Dolly Dale, but Papa and Mama will prefer our beautiful bungalows.' And you know, that certainly got folks talking, and first week we sold." The trucks sang lickety-lick, lickety-lick as the train ran through the factory district. Furnaces spurted flame, and power hammers were clanging. Red lights, green lights, furious white lights rushed past, and Babbitt was important again, and eager. 4. He did a voluptuous thing. He had his clothes pressed on the train. In the morning, half an hour before they reached Monarch, the porter came to his berth and whispered, "There's a drawing-room vacant, sir. I'll put your suit in there." In tan autumn overcoat over his pajamas, Babbitt slipped down the green curtain-lined aisle to the glory of his first private compartment. The porter indicated that he knew Babbitt was used to a manservant. He held the ends of Babbitt's trousers that the beautifully sponged garment might not be soiled, filled a bowl in the private washroom, and waited with a towel. To have a private washroom was luxurious, however enlivening a Pullman smoking compartment was by night. Even to Babbitt it was depressing in the morning, when it was jammed with fat men in woolen undershirts, every hook filled with wrinkled cottony shirts, the leather seat piled with dingy toilet kits, and the air nauseating with the smell of soap and toothpaste. Babbitt did not ordinarily think much of privacy, but now he reveled in it, reveled in his valet, and purred with pleasure as he gave the man a tip of $1.50. He rather hoped that he was being noticed, as in his newly pressed clothes, with the adoring porter carrying his suitcase, he disembarked at Monarch. He was to share a room at the Hotel Sedgwick with W. A. Rogers, that shrewd, rustic-looking Zenith dealer in farmlands. Together they had a noble breakfast with waffles and coffee, not in exiguous cups, but in large pots. Babbitt grew expansive, and told Rogers about the art of writing. He gave a bellboy a quarter to fetch a morning newspaper from the lobby, and sent Tinka a postcard. "Papa wishes you were here to bat around with him." 5. The meetings of the convention were held in the ballroom of the Allen House. In an anteroom was the office of the chairman of the executive committee. He was the busiest man in the convention. He was so busy he got nothing done whatever. He sat at a marquee table in a room littered with crumpled paper, and all day long town boosters and lobbyists and orators who wished to lead debates came and whispered to him, whereupon he looked vague and said rapidly, "Yes, yes, that's fine idea. We'll do that," and instantly forgot all about it, lighted a cigar and forgot that too, while the telephone rang mercilessly, and about him men kept beseeching, "Say, Mr. Chairman! Say, Mr. Chairman!" without penetrating his exhausted hearing. In the exhibit room were plans of the new suburb of Sparta, pictures of the new state capitol at Gallup-de-Vache, and large ears of corn with the label, "Nature's Gold from Shelby County, the garden spot of God's own country." The real convention consisted of men muttering in hotel bedrooms or in groups amid the badge-spotted crowd in the hotel lobby. But there was a show of public meetings. The first of them opened with a welcome by the mayor of Monarch. The pastor of the First Christian Church of Monarch, a large man with a long, damp frontal lock, informed God that the real estate men were here now. The venerable Mini-Magnetic realtor, Major Carleton Tuke, read a paper in which he denounced cooperative stores. William A. Larkin of Eureka gave a comforting prognosis of the prospects for increased construction, and reminded them that plate glass prices were 2 points lower. The convention was on. The delegates were entertained incessantly and firmly. The Monarch Chamber of Commerce gave them a banquet, and the Manufacturers' Association an afternoon reception at which a chrysanthemum was presented to each of the ladies, and to each of the men a leather billfold inscribed, "From Monarch's the Mighty Motor Mart." Mrs. Crosby Knowlton, wife of the manufacturer of Fleetwing automobiles, opened her celebrated Italian garden and served tea. 600 real estate men and wives ambled down the autumnal paths. Perhaps 300 of them were quietly inconspicuous. Perhaps 300 vigorously exclaimed, "This is pretty slick, eh?" Surreptitiously picked the late asters and concealed them in their pockets, and tried to get near enough to Mrs. Knowlton to shake her lovely hand. Without request, the Zenith delegates, except Roundtree, gathered round a marble dancing nymph and sang, "Here we come, the fellows from Zenith, the Zip City." It chanced that all the delegates from Pioneer belonged to the Brotherly and Protective Order of Elks, and they produced an enormous banner lettered BPOE, Best People on Earth. Boost Pioneer. Oh, Eddie! Nor was Gallup-de-Vache, the state capital, to be slighted. The leader of the Gallup-de-Vache delegation was a large, reddish, roundish man, but active. He took off his coat, hurled his broad black felt hat on the ground, rolled up his sleeves, climbed upon the sundial, spat, and bellowed, "We'll tell the world and the good lady who's giving the show this afternoon that the bonniest burg in this man's state is Gallup-de-Vache. You boys can talk about your zip, but just let me murmur that old Gallup has the largest proportion of home-owning citizens in the state, and when folks own their own homes, they ain't starting labor troubles, and they're raising kids instead of raising hell. Gallup-de-Vache, the town for homey folks, the town that eats 'em alive. Oh, Bosco, we'll tell the world." The guests drove off. The garden shivered into quiet, but Mrs. Crosby Knowlton sighed as she looked at the marble seat, warm from 500 summers of amphilie, on the face of a winged sphinx, which supported it. Someone had drawn a mustache in lead pencil. Crumpled paper napkins were dumped among the Michaelmas daisies. On the walk, like shredded lovely flesh, were the petals of the last gallant rose. Cigarette stubs floated in the goldfish pool, trailing an evil stain as they swelled and disintegrated. And beneath the marble seat, the fragments carefully put together, was a smashed teacup. 6. As they rode back to the hotel, Babbitt reflected, "Myra would have enjoyed all this social agony." For himself, he cared less for the garden party than for the motor tours which the Monarch Chamber of Commerce had arranged. Indefatigably he viewed water reservoirs, suburban trolley stations, and tanneries. He devoured the statistics which were given to him, and marveled to his roommate, W. A. Rogers, "Of course this town isn't a patch on Zenith. It hasn't got our outlook and natural resources. But did you know, I never did till today, that they manufactured 763 million feet of lumber last year. What do you think of that?" He was nervous as the time for reading his paper approached. When he stood on the low platform before the convention, he trembled and saw only a purple haze. But he was in earnest.